do the script. As a preliminary matter, this Brian Sullivan, Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, permit me to confirm all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rima Sherry.
Aye. Here.
Meg Browers.
Here.
Chantal Murphy.
Here.
Steph, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tucker Holland.
Here.
Ellis Ramos.
Here.
Vicky Marsh.
Here.
Great. And anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond to the affirmative. Judy Barrett.
Here.
Richmond Group. All right, I got a thumbs up with a mute on, so we'll keep moving. Good afternoon. This is an open meeting. The Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required. The meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Affordable Housing Trust is convening via video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note the meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating via video conference. Accordingly, please be aware other folks may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured. All supporting materials provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless we note otherwise. We'll turn to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for clear and effective conduct of our business to ensure accurate meeting minutes. Introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, we'll go through a list of members, inviting each to participate. Please hold until your name is called. Remember to mute your phone or your computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in others in conversation, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call. With that, we'll turn to the agenda and call the meeting to order. The next will be an approval of the agenda. I'll look for a motion. Having said that, I personally have not opened the minutes. I didn't get them in time to review them before the meeting, and I apologize. So I don't feel that I can vote on those. Are we willing to take a motion to move those to the next meeting?
I think not the next meeting's tomorrow, so the meeting in January, I would say, or unless we're doing another one this month.
Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Sure.
Can you put that forth as a motion, Rima?
Yeah, I motion to move the meeting minutes to the next regular meeting, which is probably in January.
Great, thank you. And Meg, did I see you second that?
Second.
By roll call, Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Meg Browers.
Aye.
Chantal Murphy.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. So with that change, I'll look for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Motion.
Okay,
Second.
so moved by Meg, second from Rima by roll call. Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Meg Browers.
Aye.
Chantal Murphy.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. So that brings us to public comment. I'll open the floor for public comment. We're on item 5. Seeing no one move for public comment, I will close public comment and move to item 6, year-round deed restriction. There we go, Judy. Was that quick?
You know, you're so efficient.
So I will open up the first item to you, Judy, the 240% AMI deed restriction program, for your thoughts and comments since the last meeting.
Yeah, so I've been working on the guidelines. I've tried to sort of model the format a little bit after your closing costs assistance program guidelines, because it's what you've got. So, you know, I'm not done, but I mean, I think it pretty much covers what we discussed last week. The one thing I left last week's meeting unclear about, because my notes are just not legible, is the town, or is the housing trust planning to set a maximum amount that you will consider for a deed restriction purchase? Was there
So
like an estimate?
So not a total valuation of the property, but a total amount that we'll spend on the restriction
I just
itself.
couldn't remember itself. I just can't remember what the discussion was about that. And maybe I just muddied the waters more than I should have, but I thought that something came up about that. Am I wrong?
I think we talked about it, but I think it's okay that you walked away confused because I don't remember it having a fine tune on it either. Rima?
Yeah, we talked about having a cap on the amount, but we didn't talk about what that would be, and we didn't really, say yes, that's what we want to do.
Okay. I think maybe for purposes of this, the pilot guidelines, which are draft anyway, for you to beat up on if you wish, I might just leave in there a blank. The maximum amount will be, the trust will consider will be X, and just, we can have further discussion about it.
I think that's a good start. Personally,
Right.
I don't know whether I'm committed to it one way or the other. Meg, you put your hand up.
I remember us talking about it, and then I think we had a conversation towards the end about there may be situations where someone does come in with a higher value property, and it could be a, case by case basis, because there may be situations where it would be beneficial. And I don't, since each case is a negotiation, I don't necessarily know that it's necessary we put on a max. That's kind of where I'm at right now, but I would be open to reasons why it's necessary.
Judy, in remembering that and thinking about the instances, like if we have a property, is it a max per unit? Or if there's a property that has the potential of a multitude of units in the future, are we thinking about it that way? I think it really needs to be addressed case by case, to Meg's point, because the variations are endless.
Okay. I mean, I'm not advocating one way or another. I just thought that somehow that had been discussed, and my notes really are just akin to those of a shaky doctor, and I can't read them this morning. But I mean, other than that, I need to just finish this simple program description and an application for you to review, which I was hoping to send you this morning, but it's not done yet. But I don't have any other questions about it. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. The income limits are not difficult to set. And as I recall, you guys were saying the income limits apply both to the person conveying the restriction as well as the person acquiring a home that's restricted. The income limits apply both ways, yes or not?
I think it's only the person acquiring the restriction, not conveying it, because you may income out over a period of time and still be able to convey it.
Okay, I thought I had understood it differently. That's totally fine.
Maybe I'm not thinking right. Can you explain how you were thinking? I'm sorry.
Nope, I can't. It's
Okay.
an example of shaky handwriting. I just want to make sure I got it right. If I were recording these meetings the way you are, I'd have perfect notes right now.
We can send you that.
Yeah, we record them.
Shut up. It's on your Zoom account, not mine. My Zoom account is the best notes in the world. Okay. I mean, it does make more sense. It's just,
well, on the town's YouTube channel, you can watch any of these meetings, which is a great plug for us. Thank you for the segue.
It's really perfect to know that I can get on your YouTube account anytime I please and listen to the same meeting I was in for how what it means to get old and what it means. I know. I'm embarrassed. I'm not going to ask any more questions because I can go back to the recording and get my questions answered. I'm done. I'm just totally done.
Does anybody have anything for Judy so we use her time well? Any questions, thoughts, comments as she's drafting that up?
Yeah.
So
go, Vicki.
So Judy, I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at the article that I drafted at all.
I scanned it this morning. Scanned it.
Okay. So I'll be looking for your comments. you know, when you have an opportunity to look at it. I totally get where you are. I'm there too.
So bad right now. It's just so bad.
So yeah, I'm just looking for whenever you get a chance.
Yeah, no, Tucker forwarded it to me this morning, so
I know that's, yeah.
I appreciate it. And Tucker, thank you for sending it.
Mm-hmm.
I probably didn't answer your email any more than I've answered anybody else's since I got here this morning.
Okay, so with that, we'll finish up, I guess, Judy's section and come to the legislation that was circulated via Vicky and open up that opportunity. Vicky, do you want to start? And
Sure. So this restriction follows is similar to the restriction that was filed by the town of Provincetown. And they have a trust. It's not their affordable housing trust they have two different ones with different goals. So anyway, they used one particular trust because that's the one that they focused on. But anyway, needless to say, I've put in, you know, obviously Nantucket's Affordable Housing Trust to be able to get the authority to acquire these year-round housing occupancy restrictions. Can you just hold on 1 second? I'm just gonna let's see. Okay, this is not acceptable. Okay. This is not acceptable, honey. Okay. Gosh. So I followed the recommendations of having this be for a primary residence for not less than 10 months a year for any given 1 year period. Okay. It can be used for rentals as well as purchases also. Okay. And it allows also to be able to have not just the trust be the holder of these restrictions. If at some point in time there's another board that perhaps select board wants to give the authority to, it could do so. It would have to have a public hearing to be able to do that. But all in all, it's basically the trust that we're focused on holding these restrictions at this time. And the acquisition of a year-round housing occupancy restriction must be approved by the select board.
Yeah.
And then, so we'd also envision having acceptances of the restrictions, as well as if there's a time when there's a release of a restriction, those would need to be also recorded with the registry. And these restrictions run with the title to the property that's being restricted. So I think those are pretty much the highlights of this. This bill would, be filed as a home rule petition. This concept is already there in the legislature. So hopefully when it arrives, they've already sort of tried to address some of their concerns with it. But that being said, it may take a little while.
have they voiced any concerns as of yet that you've heard?
That was my question too.
I have not. I don't know. Tucker, have you heard anything?
I'm sorry, what was the question again, Brian?
Has the legislator voiced any concerns as of yet to the concept of a year-round deed restriction, to the other communities' petitions?
Not that I've heard about.
I could reach out to Provincetown and just see if they've heard anything since, I did draft that legislation, and just see if they've gotten any comments back, and I can let you know at the next.
Much of any discussion happening about this,
right?
Which is kind of funny. It's like it's not really on anybody's radar right now on Beacon Hill. I don't know why, but I think so many other things to fight about. I mean, not that I hear everything, but I hear a fair amount too, and not a word.
Yeah, sometimes that's best case scenario.
So Vicky, it's reassuring to me to see your draft, which I have opened. Because I know that you and I were in the same meeting last week around the 10 months minimum, and yeah, I'm here.
So yeah, I mean, I think this is really, quite frankly, these were the only terms that I had specifics on.
So before kind of finalizing this, obviously it was circulated to the members of the board. Tucker, I think we would want to normalize this with the select board along with Judy's kind of brief outline for a pilot program.
Yep.
And get some feedback, so then we can provide Vicky any feedback before hitting print. Is that the kind of process, or?
Well, it's definitely the process that Vicky's home rule would. Libby would like to socialize that with the select board starting next week. I'm not sure that it has to be simultaneous that we're talking about with the select board this pilot program with the AMI restriction. I mean, we're not going to have, we don't have Judy's outline of that yet. So, and they're somewhat uncoupled.
Well, they are and they aren't. I mean, you're right that ultimately they're uncoupled, because when the legislation is finally approved, it is separated from the income limit question. But I do think that the pilot program guidelines are kind of a backdrop as to the why.
Well, I mean,
that's all.
Well, I think that the board and Libby understand that there is some legislative action that's required relative to having this year-round deed restriction, and therefore they want to take that up, sooner rather than later as they get set to finalize the warrant. I don't know that we want to go talk to them about the pilot program prematurely, like until it's baked. Yeah,
that's up to you. That's totally up to you.
I mean, I think we can certainly reference that we're working on this program with Judy, and we're going to come back to present that. But in the meantime, we all recognize the importance of having this year-round deed restriction similar to what Provincetown is pursuing, and therefore Town Council, which has worked both on the Provincetown measure and now our measure, has prepared something for the warrant. I mean, that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yep. Rima, and I do see you. I'll come to you in just a minute. Rima, go ahead. You're on mute.
I'm out of it too today. In the enforcement part of it, I know that what Vail has done to enforce is that someone's out of compliance, they sell. I mean, they have to give the money back. They can
like a lien.
Well, they're given money, a grant or whatever to buy the restriction, but if they're out of compliance, Vail says you have to give the money back, and then the restriction is released. I don't know if that's something that we would consider or not, or just if we'd put a lien on the property, for the amount of the restriction or something like that, Vicky, through the chair.
Rick.
So the way this is drafted right now, it's very general in its approach about enforcement. Okay. It gives them the right, the holder of the restriction, to be able to enforce this. They can go to court to enforce it. I mean, so what we envision, though, is that the restriction itself will be specific as to what the terms or rights and obligations are of the parties to comply with the restriction, and the rights of the holder of the restriction to be able to enforce it. And so I would view those terms to be in the restriction itself, not in the authority to be able to enforce it.
Okay, we got an affirmative, thank you. Vicky, did you have something else other than that question? Your hand
No,
is
I
up.
was,
Okay. Got it. So, Anne, I'll come to you.
Thank you. I had a question about the 240 AMI deed restriction.
Go ahead.
Are you thinking that it would be like the universal deed rider, except with a 240 AMI? That's like what we do at, say, Sandpiper for a 175% workforce unit. We would use the basic, it's, you know, the standard deed rider, and then just tick those boxes that are appropriate for the 175% limit. Is that what you're thinking for the 240% AMI too, except you're just going to up the limit to 240?
I've got to defer to Judy and or Vicky on the question. Judy, I'll come to you.
I'm assuming that's the case. It's a new set of income limits. Maybe I'm not understanding your question, Anne, but it's the income, the maximum income is 240% of AMI adjusted for household size.
Yeah, I guess my question is more, are you looking at the universal deed rider as the template, or are you thinking it'd be a completely different deed rider? Because like say with the covenant program, it's a different restriction that gets recorded on the property, not the universal deed rider.
So I think this is a Vicky question. This is a deed restriction. Vicky, I'm going to turn to you.
so, I mean, we can certainly use that, I think, Anne. The other thing, though, is this program is also for rentals, correct, Trudy?
That is
Isn't
my
what you're
understanding.
drafting? Yeah. So that deed obviously isn't going to be included in a rental situation attached to a lease. We'd have to have something
Different.
Vicky, help me think that through with you for a second. It's not that the restriction would be attached to the lease. It would be in the deed, and the property could be rented. So it wouldn't necessarily be a payment on the rental. It would be a payment on the restriction on the property in perpetuity, and the owner could choose one day in the future to rent it year round.
Okay.
I think that's I think that's the way the conversation has been, not a restriction attached to a lease.
Right.
Okay.
Because I don't have anything in my draft about a lease. It's all about a recorded restriction.
Yeah, and the pilot program I think we've discussed is not rental. That would be a future enabling legislation, not the pilot program, which would be primary use only.
Okay.
In the pilot.
And just
go ahead, Anne, for clarification.
Yeah. So because in the universal deed rider, there's a provision in there for leasing the unit, and you're allowed to do that with prior consent from the monitoring agent. So it seems to me that maybe that would be an appropriate place to start, but I just wanted to check to see if that was what you were thinking.
So I think that's a great thing to point out, and I don't know that we've gotten. It's apparent to me, Anne, that we haven't gotten to the detail of that far yet. We're still working kind of on outside fundamentals and enabling legislation, but obviously we'll have to look to the deed rider as a potential mechanism.
Yeah, because that's tied to AMI, so you don't need any kind of change in legislation to do that 240.
No,
that's so and just to clarify, you weren't with the last meeting, so we are bifurcating the concept here. So we're going to very quickly create a 240 AMI and down program because we don't need enabling legislation, to your point about deed rider, and then we are looking to put forth legislation through this home rule petition for a potentially unrestricted financial limit in the future. So it's kind of a two-step conversation.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Yep. Any other questions for Vicky while we're on this item? the legislation. So Tucker, it doesn't feel like this is an action item to me today, other than getting this to Libby, normalizing the conversation, and then we'll look to get something more from Judy. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
if we can, I think we've got to think about what Vicky is doing separate from what Judy is doing in terms of advancing them. And so what Vicky has done, I mean, they work in harmony and all that, but what Vicky's done is for the warrant. We need to have it on the select board agenda next week. I would say that to the extent anyone has further thoughts after today's meeting that they would like to send to Vicky and myself, and please copy Judy on any of this, send those thoughts in the next couple of days. Whatever final version at that point is available, we will furnish to Libby on Friday to include in the packet for discussion at the select board meeting next week. That is not the final version, but that's what they will look at. And then at our next meeting, we can, let's say, vote on any further, revisions to that. I'm just going to introduce, I guess, at this point, we may want to have another meeting before the 16th of January, given the timing of finalizing the warrant.
Okay, we heard that. Vicky?
so Tucker, I don't mean to disagree with you, but I would, would like to see a vote that would just basically say that you agree to forward this for consideration by the select board for their review for the warrant, something like that, because I think it's important that we at least get the board members that are here today to agree that they want to proceed to forward this on for review.
Oh,
and subject to further final comments.
If that's useful to you, Vicky, yeah, I didn't mean to say no vote at all.
Yeah.
That sounds good. And I would just say, vote to move it on, subject to any further revisions you make between now and Friday.
Right. That would be great. I think that's important just to get the board on the record. Okay.
I would make a motion to that effect.
Okay, great. Is there a second?
Sure.
Meg, I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you want to clarify? You already have a second.
Yeah. I would move to accept Vicky's draft home rule petition article for the select board to review pending any additional board comments or amendments.
Great. And Chantal, with that, you're still a second? Okay, great. So motion from Meg, seconded by Chantal by roll call. Rima Sherry?
Aye.
Meg Browers?
Aye.
Chantal Murphy?
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Excellent. Okay, moving to any last items on year-round deed restriction? Seeing none. Judy, thank you.
When are you meeting next?
January 16th, I think I just heard, but there may be in a meeting that might happen between the 1st and the 16th, as what I just also heard from Tucker.
We might want to consider meeting on the 9th, for example.
So, Judy, if you could block off some time between 12:30 and 1:30 on the 9th, that would be great.
Yeah, no, that's what I was planning to do. I just wanted to make sure I heard this correctly, and then I didn't have to rely on my notes later.
Okay. If we come to that, we'll send you a calendar invite, but let's block it off for now so somebody else doesn't scoop it on us.
That's exactly what I'm going to do.
Thank you. With that, we'll close year-round deed restriction and open proposal from Richmond Company regarding an acceleration of the 80% AMI home ownership construction. Tucker, do you want to describe this more to the board before we turn it over to the Richmond conference room?
I mean, I just will do a very brief introduction. I think Andrew, Dave, are in the best position to, go through the details of it. But I think the board will recall, I believe it was last August, we originally had a request from Richmond to consider a very short-term loan that would allow them to accelerate the production of the remaining 80% AMI restricted home ownership units. And the board had basically gotten advice from the finance department at the time that there was still an open item relative to the pump station and sewer agreement between the town and Richmond. And my understanding is that that item has since been resolved, and therefore they are back to talk to the board about proceeding with that original concept on the acceleration. And sort of with that, I would turn it back to you, Mr. Chair, or to Richmond.
Great. Thank you, Tucker. And we'll come to the room. I don't know who wants to start. Andrew, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Andrew Burek, General Counsel for the Richmond Company, I think as many of you are aware. Thank you, Tucker, for the introduction. He described this item accurately. Since the last meeting on August 22nd, we've had an opportunity to meet with the Finance Department, meet with Town Council's office, meet with the Sewer Department and resolve that sewer item. We have an agreement with them to close out our sewer mitigation and dedication agreement, make a payment toward the sewer infrastructure upgrade, which was partially impacted by our developments off of Old South Road. Also in the interim, we've had an opportunity to meet with several board members, give them some further introduction to our development, the management at the single family homes and at the apartments, and to give some general additional information related to how the progress is coming along within Sandpiper and the Meadows developments. We're here essentially to reintroduce the concept. We want to invite any questions that the board members or staff may have that we can actively address as part of this meeting. We are in a position now where I think where we had expected to be as of the August meeting. The impacts of the lack of action on the financing requests are beginning to manifest in the sense that we are in a position where the additional AMI builds outside of the 3 that we are underway with at the present time are right at the point where we're going to make a decision to delay or not delay. So we are thankful for the opportunity to have this discussion with you today, and are here to answer any additional questions on top of the interim discussions we've had an opportunity to have with all of you. So thank you.
Brian, you're muted, I think.
Thank you, Tucker. Bless you, Shanta. On the details of the proposal, does anybody of the board have any questions or want more review? Shanta?
Sorry.
Don't be.
Coughing under control. With the proposal, I'm thinking about the previous funding that was offered to Richmond in the past. Where are we with working on repayment, or where are we on the repayment status of that? I know that we had agreements about grace periods when it doesn't have to be repaid, but I'd imagine that a few are probably coming up soon. And if you guys have a plan for that.
So to you, Richmond Room.
First, thank you, Mr. Chair. We can address that. There are 2 current loans that we have with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, both for the rental side of our project, the Meadows, which is now split up into 6 phases. Just to give you some background, the Meadows 1 was an original 98 unit phase in 14 buildings. That didn't have any town financing related to it. The second phase, Meadows 2, was 24 units in 3 buildings, which we accepted loan funds for an acceleration. That was 24 units, which was we added an additional 6 units as part of the 2.6 million thereabout financing that we accepted from the town. A $925,000 portion of that was a grant upon completion of those 3 buildings. The repayment phase will begin March 9th, 2024. So the repayments, as we've worked out as part of these acceleration deals, both Wildflower and Violet Place, begin on the first anniversary, so essentially 1 year after the final date upon which the CO for the last building, the occupancy certificate for the last building issues. That certificate was issued on March 9th, 2023. So, roughly 9 months ago from today. So the repayment of interest only will begin March 9th, 2024. We've been in a position to, from the lease revenues, begin escrowing that money, and we'll be right on target to make an annual first year's interest only payment on March 9th, 2024. The second loan with a grant component was, again, as I mentioned, for Violet Place, and that was supporting phases 3 and 4 of the development. That development is still actively under construction. 2 of the buildings are completed and leased at this point in time. The 3rd building is actively under construction, is expected to be completed by February in 2024. And that has the same repayment parameters. That will be done, those repayments will begin the first year following the final date of a CO.
Chantal, any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Okay. Meg, to you.
Thank you, Brian. Tucker, through Brian to you, I guess I'm curious if you could give us your sense of where the trust stands in terms of unallocated funds at this time, and other existing proposals and projects that we're considering, and what your recommendation would be in that regard.
Thank you, Meg, for that question. So we are in the process of, we have requested for a little while now, to be candid, the finance department accounting for where funds have been spent. We obviously maintain a spreadsheet relative to the approximately 20 different buckets of money that we have been allocated over the years. And when we move forward with a particular project, we keep a spreadsheet saying, all right, we're planning to take so much from this bucket and so much from that bucket to make something happen. But it's come to light that the finance department, I'm sure for good reason, does not always take from the same bucket that we might initially have prescribed it to. And there could be any number of good reasons for them to do that. A lot of the buckets share similar parameters, for example. So we have said, it would be very useful at this juncture, particularly coming into the strategic planning workshop that we have coming up, to get a very firm accounting from the finance department on where the monies have been allocated through their system. Kind of with that big preamble, we have been allocated since 2016 approximately 84 million, and as the trust knows, as of a little earlier this year, roughly 39 million of that has already gone out the door. So there certainly are resources available to do this sort of thing. I think the finance director has determined, in consultation with bond counsel, that if we were to do what is being asked here, these could not be borrowed funds that we used for this purpose. They would have to be effectively cash on hand, and that the most obvious source for that would be the $6.5 million, which we were allocated at town meeting this year. To my knowledge, none of those funds have been expended, certainly in any material way, as of yet. Now, again, having said that, we do have some large potential investments, coming up on the horizon. For example, moving forward with the 6 Fairgrounds Road project, which has been in the works for quite some time. That's a $7.5 million proposition. In addition, there is the proposal at 135, 137 Orange Street. If that were to move forward, that would be an additional roughly 15 million. There is room in what we just went over, to fund those things and to fund what we're talking about here. So it's a bit of a long answer to the question that there is money available if we would like to proceed here.
May I follow up?
Thank you, Tucker. Yeah, please.
And can you, if it's something that you have off the top of your head, just remind me what other projects we're considering funding right now? Or is that something for executive session?
Yeah, I think
executive session.
Yeah, executive. So there's some things that aren't public yet.
And are you looking for a vote to approve this request right now? Or could this be approved in January?
I would defer to Richmond a bit on that question.
Before that one, I have a series of questions to ask as well, before we put that to you. So with a series of questions, I'm going to kind of put them all out there if you want to take notes, Dave, Andrew, and then come back to me. Sure. Andrew, you mentioned that you're at a inflection point of to delay or not delay the project. So my question is if you do choose to delay, I understand that there's a rolling permitting process that these units affect other free market units for individuals you may have sold. How does that work as far as their ability to permit? I'm unsure that I understand the collateral on the loan and what will be the total generated for the number of units at 80% AMI versus the total loan amount? And is there additional collateral being offered? And then have these units been awarded at an 80% AMI point already, or are they going to be recalculated, the dollar amount going to be recalculated after January 1st? And if so, do you have any speculation on what that number will be? And then my fourth and final question is, unfortunately, we don't have a full board here today, and other board members in the past have voiced their concerns about loaning to for-profit developers without an underwriting mechanism, which is more so than just this board. And are you open to an underwriting process through the finance department? So any loan approved by this board subject to finance department's underwriting. So those are my 4 questions.
With subparts, correct, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, a couple, yes.
I think to maybe go in reverse order, I think we would be open to a limited underwriting. I think we've been forthcoming with what we expect the collateral to be, and that there would be potential deficiencies with respect to the amount outstanding after retirement of the collateral. But I don't think the trust would ever be in a position where they wouldn't have some real estate collateral left over. Just to bounce around a little bit, the total repaid.
Could I request that you outline that in full detail, either in writing after the meeting? I just want to make sure we understand the true dollar of a deficiency.
Yeah,
and if there's any other way to make it up with a different asset that you may have.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with respect to the total repaid, it'd be about these are round numbers, $2.485 million over the 7 homes. The deficiency that I would expect would be a $550,000 deficiency, meaning loan funds in excess of collateral value. And again, that collateral value is depressed on the basis of it's being sold at an affordable rate. Just to go back, no, these would not be recalculated. They've all been at part of the reason we're pushing in terms of wanting to get these homes constructed, sold sooner is because they've all been advertised. Richmond's portion of the remaining AMI homes in Sandpiper 1 and 2 have all been advertised, subject to the lottery, and we've accepted lottery applicants. As I mentioned in my memorandum materials, there was basically an 8-to-1 approved applicant pool for each of the 6 80% AMI homes, and with the 175% home we had remaining to build from Richmond's per side, we had 18 approved households for that one particular house. Getting to ratios, we are well within our ratios from Richmond's standpoint. In Sandpiper 1, we will never have an issue. We have effectively 1 market rate lot left from Richmond's side with an excess of 6 AMI homes that have been constructed over the top of it. So we don't have a certificate of occupancy issue there. And on the Sandpiper 2 side, we are also ahead of the game. We have 3 market rate lots left with 9 certificate of occupancy allowances. Capitol Hall, Nantucket property owner, as you might know them, is managing their AMI to market rate build separately. Again, going in reverse order, you asked me to explain the collateral in fuller detail. I think a further writing on that would be more effective than to describe it in this open session. And with respect to the inflection point, that really has to do with where we are in our progress with staggering single family home builds versus the modules that come for our affordable rental apartments. If you've been by Old South Road, if you've seen any of them come off the bulkhead, if you've seen them truck through town, it's a considerable effort to have the modules, which are constructed in outside of Scranton, Pennsylvania, delivered over the road to New Bedford, put on a barge, unloaded at the steamship bulkhead, trucked another 3 miles to our site, and eventually offloaded onto a concrete foundation. We have had on the business side of our organization extensive scheduling meetings with our modular manufacturer. They have a limited capacity and they're serving multiple customers in addition to Richmond. We have had conversations with them recently in terms of what their capacity is to build versus our need. So we have chosen at this point in time, tentatively based on the discussions we're having with the trust fund, to prioritize continued construction of the rental housing modules over the single family affordable modules. That's the inflection point we're at right now. They're asking us, do you want us to put these single family homes online, or do we need to reschedule? And rescheduling those may push us beyond their build capacity later into 2024, when we may have conflicts with other developers that are not Richmond, meaning not our multifamily versus our single, but true third-party developers. I expect you probably have follow-ups based on that response, so we welcome that as well.
The only thing I'd add, could, Mr. Chairman, Dave Arminetti, I know there are a couple of members of the board that are relatively new relative to our project overall. The derivation of the deadlines and the ratios, Mr. Chair, that you asked about, are through our overall approvals for both of the subdivisions, as Andrew mentioned, Sandpiper 1 and 2, where we had a total of 94 buildable lots. As part of our planning board special permit approvals, we agreed to deadlines where there was a ratio that's fairly common, and I think the planning board has used this in other projects on a much smaller scale, but we had 27 AMI units throughout both of our subdivisions and approximately 67 market rate homes. And the permit condition with the planning board and the planning staff that was negotiated and eventually approved established a little bit of a runway where we could build some market rate houses first, and then we'd have to start to deliver certificates of occupancy for all the AMI homes in a ratio that held constant throughout the project. The rationale being, as I'm sure the board can remember, was to not allow us, or any developer for that matter, wasn't really a Richmond specific condition. It was a more generic condition that I'm sure Attorney Marsh can speak to in other projects. You don't want to allow the developer to push all the AMI units to the end and sell all the market rate units at the beginning. So absent the little bit of a head start on the market rate units, we then had to continue to deliver the AMI units in schedule, and we want to continue to do that. Fortunately, we're a little bit ahead of the game on both subdivisions, as Andrew mentioned. We're well ahead on Sandpiper 1, which is where we started physically the development. We're still a little bit ahead in Sandpiper 2. But to your other question, Mr. Chair, I think part of your question about timing and the inflection point gets to, in Andrew's response, this impacts private buyers, this impacts other parts of our project. As the board is well aware, the financing environment for buyers now is a little trickier. Timing in terms of appraisals and loan approvals is more sensitive and delicate. So if we have to push back some of these 80% houses that we've already advertised and awarded through the lottery, those buyers are going to be adversely impacted, may not be able to get financing. We'll be in a position where, because of our delays, buyers that could have got financing now can't. You know, they don't have any recourse, but we certainly don't want to disappoint them and have them have to drop out and fall to another person under them on the waiting list, which would be unfair. And as Andrew mentioned, this could impact the final delivery timing of our apartments, which are already teed up. If we have to move some of these single families back, we'd have to push them behind the apartments or push the apartments behind the single family homes. And everything is calibrated pretty precisely with the manufacturer so that that can all happen. So we would appreciate consideration to keep us on schedule, because it doesn't just impact us, it does impact other parties, other buyers. And we are at the very end here. I mean, we're down to the last 7 homes. Construction is continuing apace, and we do want to finish the deal and finish our commitment. And that's our commitment to the trust and the continuing commitment to the town. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Meg, is your hand up?
Thank you for that explanation, Dave and Andrew. And I have a question about the existing units. I want to thank you for all the year-round housing and rentals that you provided to the community. Obviously, that's extremely impactful during this crisis. During our conversation a few months ago, I know that we talked about the potential for, well, the existence of some of your properties being listed on sites such as Airbnb and being rented outside of the terms of their agreement. And I'm wondering what action you've taken thus far to try to address that, to ensure that all of the units that are meant to be year-round rentals or housing are actually being used for that purpose. I'm curious about how you see, how you've taken action on that, and how you see yourself continuing to do so that the trust can rest assured that the money we're using to provide affordable workforce housing is going towards affordable workforce housing.
Yeah, thank you, Meg, through you, Mr. Chair. In the meantime, we've had scheduling meetings internally, which obviously you're not part of, to review what our internal protocols are with respect to leasing. We've met with pretty much, I would say, every individual tenant on a recent basis to confirm for them who their household members are, who's approved to live there, you know, whether or not there are any outstanding minor concerns with respect to their either payment obligations or performance obligations in their lease. We haven't, you know, obviously these types of things are, they're not necessarily going to be forthcoming with answers if they are in fact violating, and this is just on the rental side I'm talking about right now. Nobody wants to lose their housing. You know, we try to, on a regular basis, have check-ins with our tenants, have inspections of their units if that's warranted. We get service calls, and that allows us an opportunity to kind of see behind the curtain, in a sense, in a legal way. We are, I think, as all of you on the trust might know, somewhat constrained by state law, what we're allowed to do with respect to entering a unit. We've done some reconnaissance with respect to Airbnb and VRBO and those types of platforms for rentals. We're not aware of any that are on our rental side. If they're happening in the Sandpiper 1 development, I think what's important to be aware of is there are unrestricted market rate units that should be leasing for 30 days per the regulations in our HOA. But again, that's an issue where we don't have the enforcement mechanism available to us to, when there are offenders, we can't bring them to court in a timely manner to the point where it's going to stop. And there's only so much we can do once we've sold that house. I'm certainly not aware of any AMI units that are advertising for short-term rentals or even long-term rentals. They have an occupancy requirement. And I know we've worked with the town and with Ann and Nantucket Housing to deal with this in terms of monitoring, that they have to live there for at least 9 out of the 12 months of the year. And I'm not aware of any units that are being leased on a long-term basis, because these families are part of the community. They're living and working there. They need this housing for themselves. If there are specific examples that could be pointed out to us, we're more than happy to take any remedial action that both we and the board deem appropriate. We've gone back in our rental records and tried to review to the best of our ability electricity usage, water usage, sewer usage, to find out if there, to the extent it's available to us, to any AMI units that might have, if that's a data indicator that we could use to find out whether occupancy has been interrupted for any particular period, and we're not aware. We haven't come up with any specific instances of it. So we're happy to accept all the information that the town, any staff, anybody interested in this issue, part of the community wants to bring to our attention, and we're happy to be a partner with the town to enforce those regulations.
Can I follow up, Brian? So currently you, in terms of enforcement, you have, besides obviously one-on-one interviews, you have electrical usage and water usage as part of your terms?
To the extent those accounts, yes, Meg, to the extent those counts are in Richmond Great Point, or sorry, the rental entity's custody. For the AMI units, we're responsible, you probably know, to pay for the water usage. On a case-by-case basis, there have been some accounts where they're still in the Richmond name for the electrical. Otherwise, we would have to go sort of ask the electric company for an N-grid or subpoena records, and we haven't gotten to that level yet because we haven't found anything egregious enough to go to that level and review it. But to the extent we have data from Wanakama, we're reviewing that to see if there are any large lapses. I mean, they bill you the monthly minimum, but if there's a monthly minimum only for December, January, February, March, and then it starts to kick up, you obviously know it's not being occupied year round, right? So we've been trying to monitor it from that perspective to see if we could glean any of this data, use data to our advantage, but haven't found any irregularities to date.
And if you did find someone who was violating the terms, what would the plan of action be? Would you release that unit, the rental unit, to a different year-round community member who is qualified?
Yeah, the plan of action is twofold. First of all, we would meet with them and try to give them an opportunity to remedy the issue. If it becomes a second offense type of issue, where our remedies are limited are, we have to go through the regulated process. So if it's an 80% restricted rental or lesser, we're going to have to go to EOHLC. We're going to get basically their permission to pursue that tenant, go through an eviction process, and take it from there. It takes the legal route. I think the second piece of it that we've tried to be responsive about, that is more persuasive to actual occupants, living, breathing humans that are living there, is, look, if we catch you doing this once, you're not going to rent from us again, regardless if you're qualified for this unit. If you plan to be on Nantucket long-term, be part of this community, have a job, be looking for housing, and we have the largest amount of housing available probably out of any single landlord. We keep a running list of folks that I don't want to use phrases like persona non grata, but they're not going to be offered leases in our developments.
I appreciate all the effort to ensure that everyone's adhering to the guidelines, because I think just keeping in the forefront of the conversation the fact that we are working to provide year-round workforce housing is so critical. And it's such a disappointment to hear about any kind of a project that may or may not have, people who are either renting and not living here year-round and sort of working the system to get a place on Nantucket and live here June, July, August, and then leave for the rest of the year. It's such an unfortunate situation when we know there's so many families and so many individuals who are committed to the island year-round. So I just want to impress upon you, for me personally, that's such a huge component to every project that we approve, and especially in a situation like this where we're considering extending another loan. I think it's really important that you take on the onus of ensuring that every single person who's put in one of these AMI units or one of these AMI rentals is following protocol. So I appreciate your explanation and time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, as a follow-up, if I may. We certainly take as much effort as we possibly can. You can't legislate away all bad behavior, of course. We'd like to invite you and the other members of the board and any staff that wants to be a further sort of immersive experience with our rentals. I think if you spend even 10, 15, 20 minutes in our office, you get a good glimpse into what happens day to day inside of our rental office and the folks that are coming in. And there's no shortage of, deserving people that are looking for housing, filling out applications on a daily basis in our office, talking about, how much it's helped their family, assisted them to get their, roots within the community and a foundation to build off of. I think seeing that firsthand might be a great benefit and something that we would welcome anybody who wants to take that offer from us to sit in and, be part of our staff for half an hour.
Yeah, and if I could, Mr. Chair, Dave, again, through you, the only thing I'd add is we know the staff and the board are well aware of more of the development side at Richmond, because that's who you primarily interact with, and certainly have over the permitting and the initiation of our project. But now that we're constructed, occupied, stabilized, we have a full, as the board's generally aware, and several of the board members are more aware than others, a full management staff that starts at the top with our organization, with Catherine Fossa, who's our chief operating officer and also oversees the management staff. I believe everybody's aware, but to that point, we have full-time on-island management and maintenance staff that are at the facility. Several of the staff actually live at the Meadows 2 project. I believe most of the board have interacted at some point. I know the staff has, with Aaron, our day-to-day manager in terms of leasing and management, who's on site every day. I dare say, because I know, and Catherine and Andrew know from all of our trips over and all of our meetings and all of our interaction, Aaron literally knows by name and face 99.5%, not just of our renters, but of people who have purchased. And, we proactively, within the bounds of the law, as Andrew mentioned, police the property, both internally and externally, very proactively. And we also, even though we don't have, recourse per se legally to people we've already sold to, they still have to abide by the terms of their purchase, and any resale that gets monitored actually by Housing Nantucket. But we still have stewardship of the subdivisions where we continue on a daily basis to police that. So we've got our eyes and ears out, even for people we might have sold market rate homes to, that we don't have any continuing obligation or recourse legally. Through our homeowners association, we enforce that strictly, and we have our eyes and ears out. I can tell you, through being in these meetings internally with our team and with Phil, who the board knows and the staff knows well, we really do keep an eye on it. And that, that stewardship is important to us. So we appreciate the board understanding that it is a little challenging. It's issues that you deal with on a macro basis throughout the island, but we're out there every day, every hour, and that stewardship is important to us, and we're going to continue to do our best to keep people who, Meg, as you mentioned, people get pretty creative when they try and work the system, and we try and keep one step ahead of them as best we can. Thank you. I think you're muted, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dave. Any for your comments and letting me know I was muted. Any more questions from members of the board?
You make a good ventriloquist. I could see your lips moving, but I couldn't hear you.
Thank you. Rima, to you.
Yeah, as far as timing goes, can this wait for more information to the next meeting, or is that going to completely mess up your timing, Richmond, through the chair? I'm just wondering if we can have action at our next meeting, not tomorrow next meeting, but the January next meeting, or if we should take action now with conditions, in place, such as the underwriting and the collateral list in writing.
I think before they answer, like, I'm just reviewing personally, and I just got the email re-forwarded to me that I was supposed to see on the weekend, and I don't see it, and I don't know that I'm prepared to make a vote today personally. Not having the materials in front. I apologize for cutting you off with that response.
No, it's good, but I would like to have maybe from Richmond, a time like when they when it's going to mess them up, or when they, can function. So some sort of date, so we know when we need to act on this.
Thank you, Rima. I mean, it's not without a difficulty, as I mentioned when we gave our opening remarks. I think if the pleasure of the board is to hold an interim meeting on the 9th, we could certainly address this with action on the 9th. I do want to be cognizant of the fact that this is ultimately going to be a recommendation through to the select board. The further that gets pushed down the line, the further that we are into reevaluating individual applicants for the lottery. We're further into, frankly, if this loan were to be granted, a repayment to the trust fund. We're pretty well. I think in the month of January would be to a point where we're not getting tipped upside down, but further than that would be difficult.
Thank you.
That's helpful. Thank you. More comments, questions, Meg?
I just really like the full board to be able to review this before we make a motion as well. So I prefer we hold off on any formal vote, unless, like, I would defer to Rima if you want to make a motion that we do something and allow the rest of the vote to review all the materials, or if we want to have an executive session to discuss further between now and January 9th.
Well, let me ask one question, Tucker. The select board's next or first scheduled January meeting, so meet the timeline. It was just outlined by Andrew.
The first scheduled meeting for the select board in January is the 10th of January. So realistically, if we were to take this matter up at a meeting on the 9th, and I really do feel we should be having a meeting on the 9th for several different reasons, then this likely would go on the select board agenda for the meeting on the 17th, if we took action on the 9th.
Okay. With that, Rima, I didn't want to cut you off if there was some thought or motion or something Meg was pointing out.
I hope that we can have a fuller board on the 9th, or at least review and comments on this through staff prior to the 9th. But yeah,
okay. Tucker?
Yeah, and like, I think one of the things that would be useful is to get some commentary from the finance director. I think he has expressed verbally that that the matter is resolved with regard to the sewer and pump station. I think he also has verbally indicated that that if we are if we are so inclined to be moving forward in this regard, as we spoke about earlier to Meg's question, monies are there. If we are being made whole on what we otherwise would be earning on those monies, the $6.5 million and so forth, that there is a certain comfort level there with the proper security and so forth for the finance director. But I think it would be useful to have a email or write up from the finance department on their view on this opportunity. I just want to backtrack for 1 second to what I was going over with the select board schedule. Vicky, I'm presuming, given that we're having a public consideration of this issue, that the select board would also take up any recommendation we might make in a public session versus their monthly executive session. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
That's probably their preference. I think that the last time that there were votes done in an executive session, I believe that they requested that they be done in public. I think that was the last go round that we had. So I would expect that, yes, they will probably want to take this at their the public meeting that would be the 17th, I guess.
Yes, well, that would be, then that saves us time effectively if they were to do it that way. Yeah.
Right, exactly, because otherwise we'd have to wait till February and that becomes even longer. Yes.
Yep.
So yes, I think that they would agree with that. Yeah.
With Vicky, now that you've been looped in with that, is there anything that you're looking to see other than this proposal prior to the board, so we can make sure that that we're prepared to take a vote on the 9th? You're on mute.
I don't think so. I think that if we can all be prepared to look at all the materials, and then Andrew's going to be forwarding some additional materials, it sounds like. I think that if we can all be prepared to address that and be prepared to take a vote in order to be able to try to keep this on track time-wise, that would be helpful. So yes.
Okay, thank you. And then Tom, to you.
I was just going to say quickly that works for the select board schedule. I know that we're finalizing the warrant at the end of January, and we also have a co-meeting, I think, with the HDC at the end of the month. So slotting it in right in the middle of the month seems ideal.
So then I'd suggest we just keep the item open and carry it to the future agenda that it sounds like for the new meeting that we'll be having on January 9th at 12:30. Any opposition to that? Okay, so with that, we will leave the item open, carry it over. Thank you to everyone there at Richmond. We appreciate the completeness of the questions today. And we'll look forward to seeing the follow-up materials, and I'll see you on the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all for the time.
Okay, with that, moving to item number 8 on the agenda, we have the strategic plan workshop, which we now have planned on January 11th. It's going to be a big week, couple of weeks in January, from 11 to 3. Tucker.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I know that we, just the one item I wanted to talk about, I think in terms of the timing, we know that it works for all the members of the board. We had talked about having a facilitator come in for the session, which I think we all see value in. There was one person in particular that was mentioned, Nanette Friedman. I reached out to her, and unfortunately, she is not available that day. So we alternatively, we could look at another day when Nanette would be available, or she offered that she has, several professional colleagues of capability who may be able to fill the role. So I wanted to see what the board's preference might be in that regard.
Open it to the board. I personally have no experience, so I'm open to whomever, but I think it's good that a third party helps operate. Meg?
I think I would trust Annette's recommendations. So if we could find somebody for the slot we already have, that'd be great. But if it all falls, if we strike out with everyone, then I'm also flexible to move it.
Okay, I've got affirmative head shaking from Rima and Tom as well, and Chantal.
Perfect. I'll see if Nanette has a recommendation, who can meet at the desired time.
Awesome. Other business. So we're adding in a January 9th meeting at 12:30. It seems like we've kind of led to. Then a regularly scheduled meeting on January 16th. And I guess we'll start to circulate some agendas. Maybe if we can put those concepts around before the holiday so everybody knows kind of what's coming on those meetings. Anybody have any other business or want to comment on those? Seeing none, close that. Oh, Chantal?
When we make the meeting invites, to make sure that some of us aren't getting the meeting materials and others seem to not be able to find it, can we just add the materials to the meeting invite? That way it's there in one central location. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I can do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Alice.
Thank you, Alice.
No problem.
Okay, so close other business, open to board comments. Okay, seeing none, I'll look for a motion for the purpose to consider purchase, exchange, lease, or real value of property where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of a public body, not to return to open session.
So move, Mr. Chair.
There's a second?
Second.
Second from Meg by roll call, Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Meg Browers.
Aye.
Chantal Murphy.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan tonight. Thank you, everyone.